season or a 5-week summer period or a 15-week in-season period, there's still things from a checklist standpoint that you want to make sure that you get done. There's a lot of stuff that goes into planning, a ton of stuff, especially at the college level, because you're limited so much on time. You know what I mean? I think that's probably the biggest thing I can tell you. If you take away anything, is you really just have to make the best use of every minute that you have with your athletes in college, because you're limited. In the pros, there's certain times of the year where you're a little more limited, but if you want to keep them there for X amount of time, you can do that. Whereas in college, for football, you got 8 hours a week in the wintertime, and now it also was 8 hours a week in the summertime. Now the rules changed, it just got passed, that your position coaches, which I think is a good thing, can hold meetings and things like that with your kids in the summertime, and that counts toward our 8 hours. So let's say your position coaches want to do X, Y, and Z in the film room for 2 hours. Now we can only make it our weekly hour allotment for our guys 6 hours instead of 8. So you really, really, really have to be a great organizer. You got to know how to organize your deal. So that's kind of why I put this thing together. So use this and basically I go through it and I attack a couple things a day. I work from the top down, and I just check things off as I get them. And on the right-hand column, if there's anything I need to check with the coach about, or whatever, you make notes of that. But I found that this keeps me on point in terms of planning. And you can see it takes a lot of time. From the first thing, I know you guys have talked about annual plans, so I won't go into that. But the big thing with football, in college football, that you have to understand are your discretionary weeks and kind of how those come about. You have to plan for all that. Our world is a world where you'll have, for instance, you'll have a 6-week winter period. Then you'll have spring break. Then you'll have a 3.5-week spring football practice period. You know what I mean? And then you'll have a month of discretionary time during Maymester, where the guys can go home, or if they're in classes, they can stay here and train with us if they're in classes or whatnot. Then you'll have a 6-week summer. Then you'll have a 4-week preseason, and then you have a 15 to 20-week in-season. That's what it is. So if you break that down, you can see the amount of time that you have to affect change with these guys is very minimal. It's small. It's really, really small. I think I had it. I did some math. There's about between 40 and 45 sessions a year that you can uninterruptedly train the guys lower half. It's crazy. So you better have your ducks in a row. You better be planned out, because if not, you're spinning your wheels. You're not giving your athletes what they need in terms of so they can compete at a high level. So if you just roll through this thing, if you got any questions on it, let me know. But as I'm starting to plan the off season, obviously, I always need to plan recovery first, and that's easy because of the time that guys are off, discretionary time, break time, all those types of things. Utilize those as your deload times or as your download times. Make your calendar out. Talk about the discretionary weeks. What we do here is we'll talk about discretionary weeks. We'll have our compliance guy in the room with us. There's a compliance guy for each university. We'll have him in the room with us, the head football coach, director of football ops, and we'll go through. And based on what we feel the need is from a training standpoint, we'll go through and we'll assign discretionary weeks throughout the calendar. But the NCAA says you have to have 10 discretionary weeks from January 1st through the report date in camp. Okay, so let's just say from January 1st to July 31st, 10 of those weeks have to be mandatory off discretionary weeks for guys. Okay, that's where your leadership of your seniors comes in and all those types of things, because you want to make sure that's communicated to those guys. Hey, even though this is a considered a discretionary voluntary time, get these guys in here. Once they're in there, we can spot them and make sure that they're not killing each other, and we can post stuff, workouts throughout the weight room, but we can't actually conduct it. Okay, so that's where the relationship with your seniors, your leadership, your coaching staff is so critical, that they have your back as a strength coach in order to get those guys in there during that period, because essentially that's about an extra 5 to 7 weeks a year that you can get with your guys. What do you, I mean, it's very, very simple. What does the team need? Put that above anything else, and be very, very, just take copious notes on, in your mind, what you saw from the last year. What do they actually need in your mind? There's some physical things, but it might not be physical either. What do you think that they need, and then how can you affect that in the time that you're allowed to affect it? Okay, so what are the team needs first? Individual needs, you look at the different training ages of your guys. You're going to have any mid-year guys come in. Are there going to be any differences based on position? Are there any corrective and/or weak link areas that you're going to work on? Staffing, are there going to be any changes to your staff? What are you going to do with interns? In football, we have a rule of 5. NCAA says that we can't have any more than 5 coaches on the floor at one time coaching our guys. So you can have 15 interns, but they can't do any type of coaching. So that's a rule of 5, and for all Division I football programs, that was put into effect a few years ago. The reason is you have programs, not singling out specific conferences, but you had programs south of the border that they would hire former football coaches to be weight room guys, and they'd be doing on-field drills during sessions, so they'd be getting extra practice time.
Yeah.
And for schools that have limited budget, and you know what? Is that a bad thing? It's not a bad thing, because you're trying to get your guys to become better football players. I get it, but the issue is fairness. The issue is that's the issue. Schools that don't have the budgets to afford to hire those types of people just can't hire them. So then there's a fairness issue. So that's where the rule of 5 came in. But as a guy, you got to make sure you put the 5 best people possible on the floor for your guys. So that's something you have to look at: staffing, GAs, interns. What times are you going to have your groups? So you have to make sure you have an adequate look at your class schedule and all that type of stuff. And you meet with the academic people and supplement distribution. Meet with the nutrition staff. What kind of budget do you have? What do you want to get out of it? How are you going to group your guys? All those types of things. At the end of the day, if you're responsible for football, that's your responsibility. That's it. That's your response. All of this stuff, regardless of whether you have a nutrition staff or not, this is your responsibility. You know what I mean? So you got to make sure that you dot all your I's and you cross all your T's, because you're not going to have the opportunity to do that again. You know what I mean? It's a one-time shot. You got to make sure you get all that stuff done. How are you going to record progress? You're going to use an iPad. You're going to use cards. What are you going to use? You're going to change stuff from the in-season. Did you see something somewhere else that you want to add on to your card, or you want to put stuff on monitors? How do you want to do it? Get that portion of it ready. And then if you look at templates, if you turn over, I just put a 4-day template on the back that I've used before, that you can see basically what movements you're going to do, what days, if you're going to pair anything, that type of stuff. Just talking about exercise selection. So basically, if you're going to do a 3-day split, a 4-day split, whatever you're going to do, making sure that it's time efficient. Take a look at your days. Let's say on Monday you want to do some acceleration work before they go in the weight room or whatever. How much time are you going to allot to that? Do you have the turf scheduled? Who else is out there? How much space do you have? What equipment do you need? Do you need to reorder speed belts? All that shit you've got to have down. You've got to have down. So it's more than just, moral of this story, it's more than just figuring out that I'm working at 85% on Tuesday. That's the easy part. I'm going to tell you that right now. That's the easy part. Organizationally, you better be on it. And it takes some time and experience to get there. But hopefully this checklist will kind of get you on the right track. And then I just go through our movements. What explosive movements are we going to use? What do you feel comfortable with? And for you guys right now, I'm sure Coach Thorne has you guys doing this, but you know, you should have down on a piece of paper everything that you feel unbelievable about coaching. You know, what can you coach right now? If he threw you out there and said your final exam is you got to coach this guy, and you got to be 100% for the next hour, what would you do with him to ensure that you were 100%? Well, you do stuff that you know. You do stuff that you were really, really good at, and that could be stuff that you learned in high school. Who knows? Who cares? But at the end of the day, you're coaching something that you have a lot of conviction about, that you're very, very confident about, and in turn, that's the stuff that's going to carry over with your athletes. You know what I mean? Once they see that. And then as you learn more, what do? You add to your arsenal as you learn more, but only as you learn it and as you feel 100% about it. You know? So just the different movements, you know, as you're putting together training, if you're putting together your training templates for the off season, we always include something explosive, whether you're jumping, whether you're throwing something, whether you're doing the Olympic movements, whatever you decide to do there, that's going to get your kids where you need them. Obviously, your neck work with football is absolutely critical. Bend and posterior chain, I put that in front of just about everything, because I think that's probably one of the more neglected areas I've seen in the past 10 years working with college athletes. It's really, really weak posterior side of the body, shoulders and lower body. Upper push stuff, upper pull stuff. I'm not going to read all this to you. Scat mo, rotator cuff stuff, different activation type things, VMO work, wrists, forearms, calves, ankles, all that type of stuff. You just take a look at the sport, take a look at your major joints involved in the sport, and train it.
Guys, to kind of add to that, what we just talked about this, based upon the kind of the scenario of resistance training, the scenario of annual planning, where does this stuff come from? Where does this information come from? This comes from what type of research on your sport?
Sports analysis.
Sports analysis, right? And so what does that include? That includes movement type. What else? I mean, why would you want to hit your rotator cuff? Why would you want to hit your calf, your anterior tib, your ankle? Why would you want to hit that stuff?
Injury as well.
There you go. So common injuries. So you're looking at the needs of the sport. You're looking at the energy systems. You're looking at the commonalities that you're seeing in athletes, the type of athletes, the positions, the personalities, the leaders, the vets, the rooks, and this is where this is all coming into play. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
You're good. And then based on that, and here, I put the weight room stuff on here before the movement stuff for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you're looking at it, if you're talking strictly about football, which I know we're not, but I am for right now. Our off season, our weight room that is our money work, and you'll learn that, guys, because of the amount. Your time is so limited. These dudes have got to be big, thick, quick, and tough. That's kind of the mantra I've always learned. Got to be thick, they got to be quick, and they got to be tough. And a lot of that's going to be done in the winter in their weight room work. So, you know, kind of in the winter, build the weight room. What do you need? What do you need time-wise? And kind of build the movement around that. And then things somewhat reverse themselves to an extent in the summertime. Okay, especially for your skilled guys. Does that make sense to you? Let's see. And you know, how you going to evaluate these guys? Pinpoint the times a year that you're going to overreach them. You know, have an idea what you want to do when, and then in terms of planning your training out and stuff like that, it's, hey, when am I going to evaluate them? This is how I'm going to evaluate them, and then from an intensity and volume standpoint, work backwards to where you are right now, adding in those 2 to 3 GPP weeks early, so you can make sure that they're in the right frame of mind and work capacity wise and stuff like that to handle those heavier loads. So, you know, that's from a planning standpoint. I just kind of, like I said, I go through that checklist and make sure I've dotted my I's and crossed my T's there based on individual need and team need. And then from that, you start kind of worrying about the the extras that, in my mind, will make and break buy-in. They're going to see gains. They're going to see progress if it's planned out properly and you understand those, your basic principles of overload and progression and specificity and reversibility, all those types of things. That's what we do. Okay, they're going to see progress from that. What's going to make or break a college program, in my opinion, are the little intangible things. The X factor, the competitive opportunities that they have, the team building opportunities that they have. If you want a 1-rep bench press test them, bring them in on a Friday night at 10 p.m. and do it, and turn the lights off. I'm telling you, they'll throw stuff up you've never seen before. Little stuff like that. Hold midnight workouts over the summer, 1 or 2. Theme them. Let them dress up. Little stuff like that, I'm telling you, that makes or breaks kind of the buy-in in your program, and it increases the, if they see that it's something to look forward to there, so it kind of breaks the monotony of things a little bit. So from a competition standpoint, maybe at the beginning of the off season you decide, hey, we need to be a hell of a lot more accountable than we were a year ago. So maybe you've set up accountability teams. Maybe you've got 8 or 10 captains, and those captains elect teams, and you start a point system. You hold your team accountable for doing things right. Maybe that's a way that you do it. Maybe you have a special shirt made for that year. All of these things, when I think of program design, I think of all these things when I think about program design. You know what I mean? Maybe you have little shirts made. Maybe you have competition shirts. Maybe you've got, a guy of the week, okay, or an athlete of the week, and he gets the shirt. On Friday, he either keeps the shirt or he gives it back to somebody else. Little things like that. What are your guidelines? What are your stipulations? Because you better have it written down, because they're going to ask you about it. Oh, it's not fair. Well, yeah, it's right here. Have it done. You know what I mean? No gray area with that type of stuff. Maybe you have a gold rack. Maybe you have your top lifters in a specific rack. Maybe you have another rack on the other side of your weight room that has the worst plates, that has rickety stuff. And if you come late, you go over there. Go down the edge, go down the edge. Little stuff like that. But at the end of the day, you're not going to want to go down there. So it's going to help your cause. Let's see.
A lot of this stuff, guys, it's psychology.
That's
It's understanding what your athletes, what makes them tick.
Yep.
And this is like, these are pearls, to be honest, for you guys. For some of you guys, I'm looking around, you guys aren't taking notes on this stuff. That's on you. But this is little stuff that's gonna literally will have guys performing at their best for you on Sundays or not. And this is stuff that comes from long time experiences, okay? From being in the profession for a long time and seeing what, yeah, you can program the best gosh darn program out there, but at the end of the day, if the guys aren't buying into it and they're not giving that intensity, and this stuff is going to get you that intensity, what kind of outcomes do you think you're going to get? Get what I'm saying? So these are the little tricks of the trade, so to speak, that are very important, very important.
And then back to like when you were talking about like bringing them in at night and like doing all that crazy stuff. Ball State actually this year at the end of their season wanted to have a big squat day. Did you see that?
I know, right?
They did the WWE like thing where they have them come in with the belt and a fog machine before they squat.
And you're not going to read that textbooks and stuff like that will say, oh, they're going to be too tired from class, and they're going to do this, or they're going to do that, they're going to do this. Think about it. If you were there, put yourself in their shoes a little bit. You're anticipating it all day. They're thinking about it. You put flyers in their lockers. I've even done it where I put flyers on under windshield wipers in parking lots. You have the administration come because they have one too. And it really, I'm telling you, it really adds fuel to the fire. But just being creative, get your staff together and say, hey, each of you pick one thing over the course of the winter that you think our guys will just go nuts about. And let's figure out when the best time is to do it. Those night things are usually pretty cool. And then again, making sure right at the beginning of your work, because if you're coming off of a bowl game, you'll probably have had 2 or 3 weeks since you played. If you didn't go to a bowl game, you'll probably have 5 or 6 weeks since you played. So it's important to get some quality GPP work in for those first few weeks when they're back, and really assess where they're at. I'm sure you guys heard about the University of Iowa and all the things that are going on there. At one, they had 13 or 14 guys that had rhabdo 3 years ago, and now it's coming back that one of the guys is filing a lawsuit now, and all these other things, and just little things like that you have to think about it. Is this? Do I feel 150% about implementing this day one or week one? If not, don't do it. If not, don't do it. At the end of the day, you got to make sure you put your stamp on it. In terms of stretching and foam rolling and working those types of things, maybe you decide it's something you want to do to drive that point home is have workouts start at 7:55 instead of 8 o'clock, something like that. Have the first 5 minutes be soft tissue work or something like that. Have it player led. Little stuff like that you might not think about really starts to build leadership and accountability and those types of things.
Those little 5 minute before, 5 minute after,
Yeah.
where you're working on stuff. I mean, you said that the time is so constrained,
Yeah.
especially sometimes 6 hours a
Sure.
week. Does that cut into your time, or is that
Oh,
all
yeah. Every
player
second.
led, or is that all?
Every second.
Okay.
If you're there and you're helping lead the instruction, it counts.
Okay.
So as long as it's player led, you're fine.
If you're there and you're leading instruction, it counts. So you have to instruct the players on what to lead,
Okay.
I would hope, at least the first week or so.
Okay.
But if you're there strictly for safety purposes, it doesn't count towards your allotment. But when in doubt, count it.
Do you keep your own log of that?
That's how I do
your own-
attendance. I'll do attendance based on hours. So if you've got, I'll erase this. So if you've got Josh Bonnetal on Monday was here for 2 hours, worked from 6 a.m. to 8. On Wednesday, it was a shorter session, so hour and 15 minutes, and then you have a sum function at the end that just automatically calculates it, and at the end of each training cycle, shoot it to your head coach, you shoot it to your DFO, you shoot it to your compliance guy, no gray area, it's done. Let's say he had to come in Wednesday morning because he missed class, or he had an accountability issue. He had to come in Wednesday morning mandatory, from 6 to 6:30, still count the half hour. Make a little right click, make a note on your cell so you can remind you what it's about in case you're asked about it. At the end of the week, make sure it's less than or equal to 8. Very simple. But dot your I's and cross your T's. Just don't put an X in the box because you'll forget about it.
Yeah.
Make it zero. With our world, with compliance and the NCAA and stuff like that, don't give them zero ammunition. Trust me. Zero. Nothing. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
And then one thing we started doing at Ohio State, and we're doing it a little bit here, and we did it at Kent State, that really helped, is opening the weight room for a couple hours on Saturdays. Guys are going to be here, get them out of bed a little bit on Saturday morning. We had what we called just extra workout opportunities. So you divided your staff up, and you gave each coach 2 areas, okay? And they made laminated cards for those areas. They were, each coach had to make 10 cards, okay? 2 sets of 5. So I gave Coach Lotta, I gave him back and shoulder work, okay? He had to make 5 20-minute shoulder routines. He had to make 5 20-minute back routines. He could label it anything he wanted. So maybe he labeled it Back to the Future. Maybe he labeled the shoulder routines. He had a guy flex and shoulders like boulders. But what you do is you put folders in your office. On Saturdays, on your board outside, you go, okay, guys, you come in on Saturdays. You can do a gun show, or you can do a core routine, or you can do a Back to the Future routine. When the guys come in, put them in groups of 3. They got to work with somebody. They can't work by themselves. Put them in groups of 2 or 3. Let them pick one out and go. You're controlling it a little bit. You're making sure it's not going to affect something on Sunday night or Monday that they're going to do from a training standpoint, but you're also giving them some ownership. And the ownership's the key. The ownership's the key. They get tired of listening to you. You know? So that's the checklist, and then you can see kind of on the back, I put a 4-day option there. This is by no means exactly what we'll do every time we have a 4-day split. Just kind of give you an idea of some things that we do, and obviously we plug the exercises based on time of year, based on what an individual is capable of doing at that time. Kind of go from their different core categories, the different core categories we utilize. So, any specific questions or anything like that y'all have? I'm more than happy to answer them. A little quick, but hopefully I gave you some good input there.
You talked about like opening up the weight room on Saturdays or things like that. From a coaching perspective, how do you you're here a lot of hours every day per week. How do you spend that time? Like, how do you have some time for yourself, I guess, from any of this stuff?
You better make it. You're in the wrong business if you want a lot of time for yourself, if you want to win. It's the biggest thing I can tell you is there's going to be times where, it'd be nice to sleep in. Or there'd be times where it'd be nice to take your wife and kids to Chicago for the weekend or whatever. But are you where you need to be in here? Are you? Well, you were 1-11. Hell no. You were 5-7. Hell no. You were 7-5, 8-4. No, it's not good enough. You know what I mean? You have to understand that there's no secret formula. There's no piece of technology that's going to automatically increase that win-loss record. It is investment, period. It's investment. And if that's something that guys have never done before, and they need, that they need to increase the way that they invest, then that's something you can implement. Does that make sense? But that's what I would tell you. I mean, this is a tough deal now. It's a tough business. There's a lot of times, and a lot of it will depend on the head coach too. But at the end of the day, the head coach wants people to invest more than typically what they have done in the past in order to keep getting better. And as a coach, you just have to figure out in your way, what the best way is for your team and for you. A couple hours. I don't have kids. If I had kids, I'd bring them with me on Saturday mornings. You know what I mean? I'm not married, but if and when I do, my wife will come in and walk on the treadmill or something like that, or do something, and we'll go to lunch afterwards. But just little things that if you're not where you need to be, chances are the people touching the program better invest more. And even if you do get to the point where you're 11-2, 12-2, 13-0, it's okay to break it one more time and try to figure out another way to do it too.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't realize it, but strength and conditioning staffs, I would say, depending upon how hours go, they spend probably more time a lot of times with the coaches, with the strength and conditioning staff, than with their position coaches, their head coach. So in terms of communication with the staff, communication with the athletes, there needs to be a big connect there. Everybody needs to be working together. Very siloed organizations don't work very well. in that regard. You know, and that's where, you know, if you're, I think Coach will probably, you know, speak more to this, is you know, are you promoting the, like he's saying, are you promoting the investment on the stuff that the coaches are doing on the back end with film study and everything like that? Are you able to promote the themes that they're trying to lay out for the program to help it win, to help it progress, whatever you're trying to do for it. So
You know, there's gonna be times where your kids they're gonna get tired of the extra. So you better do something to make it cool. You better step outside yourself a little bit and get creative. Or if that's not your forte, you better hire somebody who can do that. You know what I mean? Or you better get on the phone and do this and do that, because you've got to keep them coming back. You've got to keep them wanting more all the time. And that's your job. If you can't do it, you're probably not going to be in business very long. I'll be honest with you, because you're not going to get the most out of them. You can keep them coming back. Keep them curious about what you're doing. Oh my God, what are we doing next? That type of thing. Now, obviously, keep them physically going in the right direction. That all goes into that. You know what I mean? If you keep them curious like that, their physical gains will go through the roof. Yeah.
How do you guys, I mean, I don't know how often it happens, but with a lot of your athletes, let's say they train a lot on their own, like while you guys still train, you know, how do you go about that so they don't, like, per se, overtrain or?
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's a great question. The big thing, and what I've always done is just say, okay, guys, you know, if you're going to do the extra work, this is why we've created that extra program for you to come in. If you want to go to the co-rec and do something, I'm okay. I was in college. I get it. I mean, you want different scenery. You want. I get it. I'm with you. Just communicate. Just, hey, Coach D, I'm on my way over here. Is it okay if I do X, Y, and Z? Nah, man. Hey, tomorrow we're doing this. Speak. And as long as you give them that opportunity to be a college student and go do that if they want to, as long as you give them that opportunity, you don't try to handcuff them. They'll communicate with you. A lot of, I mean, athletes aren't going to go behind your back. They won't. They won't. That's how I would treat it. Just be honest with them. But always provide an opportunity for them to do it there.
Yeah.
With you.
This might be on topic a little bit. It kind of goes with communication. And you mentioned this too, with like a lot of the stuff that we're talking about with like technology, like programming, all like the new variations of things. A lot of times, new advances, they help with that. What he said, communication. Okay, they help with the communication with the athletes to the coaches. They help with the coaches' communication with themselves. They help with the communication of the coaches to the athletes. So, as you take anything from, you know, a lot of this stuff is being able to communicate efficiently. You know, being able to, you know, create that relationship, like he's saying, where an athlete will want to come talk to you, will want to, you know, if he's gonna go do extra work or something like that, he's gonna let you know. You have that type of relationship where they can tell you that stuff, or it's open like that.
Yeah. You know, and if a kid tells you something like that, hey, I'm gonna go do, you know, drop your ego and say, all right, man, it's okay.
Yeah.
You know, if he goes over there and does some shrugs or a few sets of squat or something like that on his own, it's okay. The communication part's the key. A lot of coaches are like, no, yeah, blah, 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 blah. Come on, drop your ego a little bit. You know, kids see right through that stuff. You know what I'm saying? Just make sure that they communicate with you. And always give them a chance. Say, you don't have to practice. I'll keep it open for a half hour if you want. And, you know, 75% of the time they'll come in and do it with you after you tell them that. And for the ones that don't, make sure they come.
Plus, if you tell them not to go, they're still going to go. I'm like,
so, speaking on this communication line, how do you communicate with athletes that just get injured in a game and now you have to work with them in the weight room you have part of the team in one corner and it's just them and a select group of others in another corner. How do you keep them on task, focused, and not really relating back to their injury, but keeping them and empowering them to continue to move forward?
Well, that's a staff. I mean, that's your coaches, and you've got to have some great people with you that you trust in those types of situations. What I've always done is I've always kind of